Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of First Impression Sports Talk. I'm your host, Jasmine Pollock, and today I have a special guest, William Chip Rogers, the CEO and president of American Hotel and Lodge, is going to be here with me to talk all things sports from college football, NBA, NFL, you name it. We're going to talk about it. So let's bring on Chip and have a wonderful conversation about sports.
Jasmine, it is so good to see you. Thank you for inviting me. People are probably wondering, what the heck is this guy that got something to do with hotels talking about sports? And all of my friends know that if you want to really ask me about anything, I know a little bit about politics, a little bit about hotels, but a lot about sports. This is my favorite topic.
Sports,
so
of course, sports is what brings everyone together. I'm super excited about this conversation because I know, just a little background before we get into everything. I saw your post. I know Leon saw your post, and he commented when you were talking about Victor Wembanyama. I was like, oh man, like I need to talk about these things. So I'm really excited about this. We're gonna have a great conversation to talk about sports. But the first question on the board is, who are some of your favorite teams, favorite players? Whether it's college, NBA, NFL. What are some of your favorite teams?
All right. Well, I've had the same exact favorite teams from the moment I first started liking them, and I have a story behind every one of them. I won't go into that much detail, but I will tell you my teams. And they never changed from the moment I liked them when I was a small child until the day I die. These will be my favorite teams. So first and foremost, the Miami Dolphins in football. Just remind everybody, there's only been one perfect team in the history of professional sports, and it is the 1972 Dolphins that capped off that perfect season in 73. In basketball, it's the Boston Celtics. In baseball, it's the Boston Red Sox. In hockey, it's the Boston Bruins. And now you're probably saying, this guy's got to be from Boston. I have no relation to Boston. I just love those teams. And so those have been my favorite teams. I did my undergraduate work at Georgia Tech, so I'm a Yellow Jacket through and through. I think one of the greatest unheralded players in the history of both college football and the NFL is Calvin Johnson.
Yes.
Though my guy Tyreek might be breaking his record this year. We'll see. And that's okay because he's a Dolphin. But
yes.
But yeah, Georgia Tech through and through.
Yeah, and that's a star-studded list. I mean, a lot of history with all those different organizations. My fiance is actually Miami native, so he's everything Miami. So he would be thrilled to hear you say that. So when we talk about, college, we're talking about that. Today is a big day in college football. We know this is the championship weekend. Big juggernaut teams are playing against each other, and then we're looking at, possibly the seeding of the Final Four. So last night we saw Washington beat Oregon in a great thriller. I mean, it's the second game and they had a thriller again. What is your depiction of the Final Four? Who do you think is going to be locked in that Final Four?
Boy, this is a tough one. I mean, you look back the last few years, and I think most years it seemed pretty clear cut. A little controversy last year, I think, between Ohio State and Alabama. They just didn't want to put two SEC teams in there. But this year, look, there's so many options, and I think the real question is going to happen with the SEC championship. So if Alabama wins that game, everything goes into flux at that point, because then the real question is, does the one-loss Alabama team fall behind the one-loss Texas team, assuming Texas wins, only because Texas beat them straight up? And so I still think if Alabama wins that game and you're the selection committee and you're looking at it saying, all right, who's playing the best football right now? Who has the better resume? That Texas game was early in the season. Alabama is a much different team right now, and Jalen Milroe probably improved more than any player in college football this year. And so I think if Alabama can knock off Georgia, now we're talking about a historic team here in Georgia. This is not just a team that happens to be number one. I mean, they are in the record books now, most consecutive SEC wins. If they do that, I think you go Alabama. I think Georgia still makes it. I think you have Michigan and Washington. And I think, unfortunately, Florida State gets knocked out, even as an undefeated team. Texas gets knocked out as well. So, but it's a tough decision. This is not an easy one.
Yeah, I agree 100%, because when we look at it, like all the years, like you said before, has been clear cut. We already know, okay, this team is strong, this team is strong, this team is strong. But this year's a little different. There's so many questions. And I've seen a lot of, sports media personalities. They've been saying, like, we don't feel like there's been a top strong team from top to bottom. There's been a lot of questions about all these teams. So when I look at it, I
think they're wrong on that, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think this SEC championship game, though, is going to be all eyes. It's at 4 p.m. just for everyone looking forward to that. But when I look at it, Alabama's a different team from that Texas loss. They're a completely different team. They've been proved. Jalen Milroe's found himself. That offense is clicking. Defense has improved. And, of course, Georgia. They're trying to get that 3P, trying to get back to that and break records, like you said. So that game is going to be huge. But there's this conversation about no SEC team, and I was like, I don't think the committee's that's not going to happen. We can't not have an SEC team in the Final Four. That's just impossible. But when we look at Florida State, now my dad, he's a Florida State, so he might not like what I'm about to say. But Florida State, I feel like everyone's going to look at them. Of course, they're playing a tough Louisville team, but I know Louisville lost last week. But without Jordan Travis, their leader, quarterback, I don't think Florida State is that strong enough to get in there and compete as much. Even though they have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball, but Jordan Travis was their leader. So I feel like I agree with you. I think Florida State might not make it. I don't think so. But when we look at
tough.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say a couple of things. One, anyone who says an SEC team's not in the Final Four, that they really honestly don't know what they're talking about. I mean, look at the total domination of the SEC teams over the last decade. In this tournament, in this Final Four that they've had in college football now for a decade, more than a decade, the total domination of the SEC teams. For someone to suggest that no one should make it, that's just a bias. That is an unrealistic.
Yeah.
I mean, last year I would make the case, and I did make the case, that Alabama should have been there other than Ohio State. Ohio State got destroyed at home against Michigan.
Yes, they did.
Alabama had 2 road losses, both on the final play of the game in overtime on the road against top 10 teams. But that was last year. This year, Florida State, I think the problem with the Seminoles is the ACC is so bad. You had a team like Liberty playing, going to the last night's game. I didn't even see the final score. I'm assuming they end up winning. I'm not sure, but I think they were undefeated, right?
Yeah.
No one would say Liberty should be in the Final Four, and the reason they say Liberty shouldn't be in the Final Four is because, well, they don't play a tough schedule.
Right.
Florida State has not played a tough schedule.
They haven't. No.
If they had their quarterback, you probably have to put them in, assuming they win the game today. But they don't. And if the committee is supposed to pick the 4 best teams, I don't know how you make the case, and I hate it for my Florida State friends, and I got a lot of them. They're just not one of the 4 best teams right now, even though they could potentially be undefeated.
Yeah, I agree. And Liberty did win 49-35 last night, so they're 13-0. They finished the season 13-0.
But no one's talking about them being in the playoff picture,
in the 4, right? Exactly. And they're first in their conference, obviously. But when we look at Florida State, and I'm a Gators fan, so I'm hurting a little bit because we lost to them last week. But I looked at our game against them, and it took us falling apart for them to win that game. Like, I was like, oh, wow, we're up 13-0. Like, oh, my gosh, could we, pull off the biggest upset? And then, of course, we started teetering, and then things broke loose from there. But Florida State, and like you said, the only game like, I know some of them are talking about is that LSU game week 1, but I'm like, that was week 1. And I think LSU they've been weird this year. I know, of course, Jaden Daniels, he's leading the Heisman conversation, but Florida State, after that, they haven't played anyone. They played, of course, they can say, well, they won on the road and beat Clemson, but Clemson was on the decline and they, ascended again at the end, but they haven't had a strong season, and when we look at that, them getting in the Final Four, I don't see it, especially without Jordan Travis. I don't see it. And that's not me, as a Gators fan saying, that's just me being honest. I look at, and even my dad, he said, how, when you look at Ohio State, even that game between Michigan last week, that was a good game. I mean, it was like a play, that changed the game, and he was like, you can't drop Ohio State that low because they're still one of the better teams in, the country. But speaking of which, now we head into next season.
Let's be clear though, they're not playing today. Ohio State is not.
That's right. So when we look at that, right, heading into next season, we have so many conferences changing. The Pac-12 is gone. So many things are going to happen. People are going to change different conferences. And then we're going to have the 12 bracket system in college football now, where it's 12 teams. How do you think that's going to look next season for college football? Would that be, I'd love to see it because I'm really excited for that 12-team playoff system. But how do you think it's going to look next year with the different conferences and the different teams that are going to be in?
Well, I don't know. It seems like we hate stuff until we try it, and then things are okay. I don't think this is kind of a new Coke thing from back in the 80s.
Yeah.
My one concern is that you begin getting rid of some of the traditional rivalries. And I know they try to protect those, at least the super traditional ones. Again, they're not switching conferences, but like an Alabama, Auburn, a Georgia, Florida, those are always going to be protected. Right. But you hate to see some of the traditional rivalries gone. This idea of teams on the West Coast playing in the ACC, it seems a little crazy. The travel is going to be a big issue. I mean, if you're a West Coast team and you're coming east, especially if you've got a noon Eastern kickoff, that's going to be a big deal. I like expanding the playoff a little bit because it does give an opportunity for a hot team at the end to make it. So I love college football. I think unlike college basketball, which is kind of sadly fading away because of the G League and what your opportunities to play internationally, college football, just because of the physical maturity that's necessary for a young man to go to the NFL, you really have to go to college for a couple of years. You're just not ready. And so it's still an amazing sport. I think whatever changes they make, it will continue to be an amazing sport. But two things I would say. One, they need to look at name, image licensing just because of the revenue that's generated by certain schools.
Right.
If you don't get a handle on it soon, you're going to protect those top 25 schools and it'll never change just because kids can get paid a lot. The second thing is the transfer rule. I mean, I know you want to give kids the opportunity to go a lot of places, but it's a little out of hand. There's got to be a happy medium. Fans want to rally around those, as I mentioned a moment ago, the rivalries, and they kind of want to know the players. Like, it's nice to know a guy that stays there 2 or 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you see the quarterback at Washington, and I'm glad he got his opportunity. Super talented kid, and hopefully this will turn into an NFL career. I'm a little worried about his throwing motion, though. It looks very Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
A little
he's
slow.
A lefty too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we'll see. But I think college football is a great product, and it's going to be there. It's not going away.
100%. I'm really excited for the 12 team playoff system, because now we're going to see a lot more things. It's going to broaden a lot of perspectives. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to happen. I'm really excited about that. But when we look at, and I agree with you with the transfer portal, I think that needs to change completely, because it's literally like now, and people were talking about that yesterday. It's saying like now it's like the free agency of college football. It's literally free agency how NFL has it, where these guys are like, okay, I'm out, I'm done, and I just feel like the NCAA has to like find a way to rally behind this and really like decipher what rules and regulations that they can put in place to fix this, because there's so many things like, and you've seen schools have benefited from, having these players coming. Like when you look at Florida State with Keon Coleman, he with Michigan State, and then he transfers over to Florida State, and then he blows up the way he did, even though he was talented already. But it just changed the landscape. Bo Nix changed the landscape of these teams. So when we look at it, I think we need to like regulate it a lot better, and add those, like you said, those rivalries, because we love rivalries too. Those things and that's what makes college sports because of the rivalries for sure. But final question: who do you think is going to finish with the Heisman? I know that's the conversation being had. Who do you think is clear cut? I want him, but I know Jaden Daniels is leading it right now. But who do you think?
Gosh, it's always a question between who's the best player, who makes the biggest impact on a winning team. And so, you look at the Heisman and, it's almost always going to be a quarterback, which is a little unfortunate. But the reality is in football, especially in today's football, with everyone running these intricate option plays, the quarterback is making the decisions both physically and mentally that dictate whether his team is going to win. So it's really hard to get away from the quarterback. Then you got to ask yourself, who's the most talented quarterback? Yeah, the LSU quarterback probably for college football anyway is the most talented, but they're also not playing today, and I'm not sure they're going to be playing in a New Year's Day bowl game either. And so then you fall back to, man, it's hard to say Bo Nix didn't have the season that would give you a Heisman. I'm doing a terrible job at answering this. I don't know who's going to win it this year. There's no clear cut. I mean, last year Bryce to me was the best, one of the smartest.
Yes, he was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what Stroud's doing in the NFL is really opening some eyes, and what a great kid.
Yeah.
You can't do anything but root for him. But last year, Bryce was the best player, probably the smartest quarterback I'd seen since Andrew Luck at the college level. But this year, I think you're weighing like who played the best and who led their team the best while also playing exceptionally well. I might go Bo Nix. It's tough. He lost last night, but I'm not going to make a call. That's a coin flip.
Yeah, me too. I'm just looking at it. Of course, Jane Dales, he had video game numbers this season. But then you have Michael, then you have Bo, and it's like, I don't know what to do, And then I think JJ McCarthy's still in the mix. Michigan's quarterback, I think he's still in the mix, but I don't know. I don't think they're gonna give it to him. But I think it will come down to, I think, this season, maybe the winning. Maybe, they might lean with Michael Penix because, okay, the story, and then they're in the four, and then if he's able to pull off the, a championship and give the team a championship, maybe. But I agree with you. It's not clear cut. It's not like, because Jaden Daniels, again, is not playing today. He didn't lead his team past an Alabama, past those schools like that to compete. So it's a little interesting, but we're going to head into the next segment.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick name out there. I know he's not even under consideration, but the kid from Georgia.
Yes, Beck.
For the record, I can't stand the University of Georgia. I went to Georgia Tech, so this is not. I am not a Georgia fan. And when people say, "Well, they haven't been that dominant," they don't know what they're talking about. Every time Georgia had a game where they needed to be dominant, and at every moment where he needed to deliver all year long, he delivered and they dominated. And so, I look at that line today, and I think Alabama's a great team, but 4.5 seems small for a Georgia team that when focused. Wow, I don't know how you beat them. They're a complete team. With Brock Bowers back, I mean, he's almost impossible to cover.
Yeah, best tight end in the country.
Yeah, I mean, great team. Anyway,
he's ridiculous, and as a Gators fan, I don't like them either, but I have to give props are due.
Respect.
But let's head into the NFL. I know that's getting closer to. We're getting closer to the playoffs, and things are starting to narrow down as we head, into the new year and different things like that. So, as a Miami Dolphins fan, there's this question and these conversations. Oh, they're never beating a winning team. They're beating up bad teams, but I'm not going to say that. Where do you see your Miami Dolphins heading into the postseason? I had them. I think they're going to win the division. I had them winning the division before too. But where do you see them in the seeding wise heading into the AFC? Where do you think they can be, and what do they need to do to get to that promised land to the Super Bowl?
Well, look, it would take a total collapse to lose the division at this point. The Jets and Patriots out, and the Bills, who still scare me because Josh Allen's so good. But they've lost a lot of games, so they're going to win the division. Look, I'm a huge Tua fan on skill set. Like, the kid throws an incredibly accurate ball, and in that offense, that's really important. You still have some problems, obviously, with arm strength. He just can't get the ball to Tyreek on a lot of those deep routes. But my bigger concern is decision making. I mean, that scares the daylights out of me. You saw that pick six he threw the other day against the Jets. And like a really good NFL quarterback never makes that mistake. And I don't know what's going through his head at times. He can play exceptionally well, and he'll make some passes, especially when he does the quick drop. He'll make some amazing, accurate passes. Love Jalen Waddle. I love that guy. But then he does some really stupid stuff. And
questionable, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, the interesting stat on the Dolphins that tells you what they could be, they're 6-1 this year in games in which they have more turnovers than their opposition. The rest of the NFL is at about 25 or 30% on winning percentage. So most NFL teams can never overcome the turnovers, and yet the Dolphins continue to do so. So if you can eliminate Tua's dumb plays, the defense is getting a lot better. Jalen Ramsey coming back was a huge help. You knew Fangio would get this team playing better. They've got talent on that side of the ball. Christian Wilkins has had a better second half than he did first half. I think they're in the mix. I don't like when people say, well, the easy schedule stuff. I mean, a win is a win in the NFL. Everybody that walks on the field's got talent, maybe outside the Panthers, and they have talent. They're just young. So, look, they've got a shot, but if you said to me, Chip, you got to pick a team that could win it all. If they're firing on all cylinders, I don't know how you beat the Niners. And the Niners are
they're scary.
No disrespect to the Eagles, because I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan, but I think the Niners completely healthy, and we'll find out this week.
Yeah, big game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they play each other in Philly tomorrow. And being that you mentioned that too, we talk about the 49ers. And you add Chase Young to the D line, you get that. I'm still trying to figure out how they got that done, because it's like, man, okay, you have Nick Bosa, You have Armstead in the middle. Then you get Chase Young on the other side. And they're, Nick Bosa and Chase Young, they're both, they were teammates back at Ohio State. So you add that. And at the same time, like I saw some clips and some footage. At the same time, they're at the same point on the same side. It's ridiculous how fast they get off the ball and stuff like that. But again, when you say, I look at the 49ers, I don't like the 49ers, but they all cylinders. They have the pieces, they have the defense, they have the coach. It's just, can they get over that hump? And then, of course, they lost to the Eagles in the NFC Championship last year, so there's going to be a rematch, and we're going to see how they match up well. But when I look at Philadelphia, people, talk about them and they're not giving them their props. When I look at Philadelphia, they're finding ways to win. And it's scary, even though they're not the most impressive. They're finding those ways, either if it's Jalen running, if he's making that pass, the defense gets a pick or something like that. Each game, they're finding ways to win. And that's why they're really scared. So this game, I'm really excited for this game. I think it's going to be back and forth. I really do. We'll definitely see how Jalen Hurts and the tush push would work against that D-line. We're really going to see how that looks. But
they got to get rid of that. I mean, that's ridiculous. Look, I'm with you. Eagles, talented team, super well coached, well coached. I don't think we'll see what happens Sunday, but they got their home field advantage there. But they got to get rid of the tush push. It's a ridiculous play. And I root for Jalen. I'm like you. I don't like the Niners, but if I take off my rooting hat, I got to say, at full strength, with that defensive line, like you mentioned, if McCaffrey's healthy and Debo's healthy, man, that's a good team. That's a real good team.
It's an unstoppable offense, because Kyle Shanahan, the way he runs his offense is just exceptional. The run game, and then of course you have Brandon Ayuk you can throw down there. Of course, Kittle's still blocking and getting down the field. They have so many weapons, and then Brock Purdy, he's putting the ball where he's, asked to put the ball. So I mean, they are a team to beat. I just think them and the Eagles are leading the charge. I know everyone say, "Oh, Dallas." I'm not sold on Dallas. I despise Dallas. That's my least favorite team out of everybody. I know they keep, Dallas and Dallas. Dallas. I'm tired of hearing about Dallas. And I just feel like Dallas is on the outside looking in. I feel like they don't want to go play Philly on the road or the 49ers on the road in the playoffs. I just don't see it happening for them. But when we look at the Dolphins, like I've been sold on the Dolphins when they got Tyreek and Waddle. I was like super excited for this team because they're my third team. And I just want to see Tua get over that hump, because I know so many people were down on him. So many people were questioning him, even last season, even when Brian Flores was there. Oh, they're going to get this person. They're going to trade for this person. And they stuck with him, and he's developed very well. Mike McDaniel is a godsend for this team, just how he is leading them, his energy, the offensive play calling. I'm just really excited for the Dolphins. And then, of course, the defense has gotten better because Jalen Ramsey has really improved that defense. I know the biggest loss was with Jalen Phillips. I was really hurt for him because I think he was coming on strong as well. I think the Dolphins could really do some damage. I just think if Tua can just correct some of the decision making, because I don't think anyone can stop this offense. Again, I think if you're going to play Miami Dolphins, you have to score at least 30 points. If Tua is on fire, if they're on fire, clicking on something, you have to score 30 points. But when I look at the AFC, I look at the Ravens. I mean, the defense, if Lamar can, continue to do what he's doing. Of course, Kansas City, I know they're still having issues with the wide receiver core, but Kansas City is still in the conversation. Houston, I did not see C.J. Stroud coming. I like C.J. Stroud coming out of college, but I was like, Bryce Young is really good. But what he's doing, what C.J. Stroud has done and what he's doing so far, and how they're no-name guys becoming names, it's scary to me. And they're a playoff team. I didn't see them being a playoff team. D'Amico Ryan, how he's leading the charge on the coaching side, it's exceptional. I'm really proud of them. But for you, what do you say about this Texas team? Do you think that they could make a run, like a really magical run, and then CJ just I'm just going in there doing my thing? What do you think about them?
First of all, D'Amico Ryan, coach of the year, hands down. I mean, they were predicted to win 3 games. CJ Stroud couldn't be a nicer kid. You got to be so happy for him. I mean, people doubted him a little bit, and he has delivered in a big way, in a hurry. So love the kid, and his shoulders alone have brought them a couple wins. Right. I don't see them making a run in the playoffs. I mean, look, as you know, it's the NFL, right?
Yeah,
this stuff is tough. But even if they make the playoffs, and that is a monumental victory for that organization. going back to a couple of other teams you mentioned, one thing to not overlook for the Dolphins, if they can get A-Chain back on the field, that kid brings
a different
dimension of speed. I mean, insane speed. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's a track team.
Yeah, it's the track team. They have 4 guys on the team that won conference championships in sprinting at their respective universities. So then you've got Baltimore, who I think, if I had to pick a team in the AFC right now, is probably my favorite. I mean, Lamar's, when he plays within himself, fantastic. I think there's a benefit in him losing the tight end, the Andrews, for a little while, because that's his safety blanket.
Yeah.
Maybe we can figure out some other guys to throw to. But again, exceptionally well coached, defense coming around. Lamar is Lamar. If he's playing well, he's almost impossible to stop. And then you got Kansas City, and look, I mean, he's the player of our era. I mean, Mahomes is a special person. There's nobody else like him in the NFL. He makes things happen that nobody else can make happen. Now, you know, you could have put Aaron Rodgers in that context just a few years ago. Obviously,
yeah.
Out now, but you can't count Kansas City out only because they have the most special player in the NFL.
Mahomes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if someone says who you got to bet on right now, I'm going Baltimore in the AFC and San Francisco in the NFC.
Ooh, that would be a crazy Super Bowl. That would be a crazy Super Bowl. But when you mentioned Kansas City too, just for the people at home, if Kansas City does not get the number 1 seed, this will be the first time Mahomes will have to go on the road to get to the Super Bowl. So that if I'm Kansas City, because I know they haven't played to their standard this year, you know, the receivers, there's been a lot of questions. Of course, I have no questions about Mahomes or Travis Kelce, but it's just the outside of them two on the offense. It's just been a lot of questions. If I'm Kansas City, I'm really trying to get that home field advantage. I wouldn't want to go on the road to maybe go to Miami, or maybe and I know they beat Miami, but maybe have to go on the road to play a Baltimore. I wouldn't want to do that because it'll be a different dynamic and a different, you know, scheme that they're used to, because this will be the first time them being on the road in the playoffs, because they've always had home field advantage, you know, as long as Mahomes has been in the league. But it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to come down to the wire. When it comes to the NFC, I think you could say there's probably those. I think the Eagles and the 49ers are the 2 best teams in the NFC. And then, of course, you still have the Lions over here, then Dallas, yeah. But those 2, they're the toughest to me. But the AFC, there's so many teams. Like, it's like, I don't even know who to pick. You know, I was going to say the Bengals until Joe Burrow got injured. You know, that's a huge loss for them. I mean, what Joe Burrow means to that organization and what he's been able to do. The Bills, I don't like the Bills either, but, you know, Josh Allen, if they can muster up some sort of, you know, streak, maybe. But there's just a lot of teams in the AFC to look up to, you know what I mean? So
you didn't mention Jacksonville. Look, Trevor.
That too, yeah.
Trevor's got the skills. I mean, that kid can play, and they're pretty well coached. They started the season
8-3. They're 8-3.
Yeah, they're going to have probably a home game in the first round. I wouldn't count them out. I mean, they might be peaking at the right time.
And also, not to mention their coach, Doug Peterson. He is a Super Bowl winning coach with the Eagles, so he has that pedigree. And even last year, they went to Kansas City and lost by 3 points. I mean, that's moving in the right direction, and what they were able to do last season. I'm really excited to look at Jacksonville. I completely forgot about Jacksonville too, but there's a lot of teams to look forward to in the AFC as well. Now, heading into NBA, this is probably our final topic of the day. NBA, we're heading into, you know, they have this tournament going on. There's so many things. And you said you're a Boston Celtics fan. So how do you see Boston looking? You know, with Porzingis, we were, you know, seeing they traded Marcus Smart. What was your reaction to all of that? And do you see, could Boston make a run to get that, you know, number 1 spot and maybe go back to the championship? What do you think about the Celtics?
Look, love Marcus Smart. I mean, the guy will run through a wall for you. But the reality is, in today's NBA, that was a good trade for the Celtics. They needed another rim protector. Al Horford, gosh, what is he, 90 years old and still playing at a pretty high level. Great guy. You got to love Al Horford. But, man, he's getting up there. He can't give you 32 minutes a game. And so getting Porzingis really helped. That spread that offense even more. 1 through 5, they are clearly the best team in the NBA. I don't think anyone doubts that. The problem the Celtics have, if you just check their box scores every night, which I do, they go 8 deep.
Yeah.
And that is it. And these guys can't log these minutes in an 82-game schedule like this and be ready for the playoffs. And so I know they want to get the number 1 seed. That's obviously the goal. But I would rather have a healthy, functioning team and not be number 1 than just to have that home court advantage the whole time.
Right.
This is what it was in the NBA back in the day. So they got to start getting some rest. I don't know what Brad Stevens will do and bring in somebody, but it would be nice to get some veteran help as you get closer to the trade deadline, because they're literally an 8-person deep team, and the guys can't do that. That being said, most talented team in the NBA 1 through 5, hands down.
And
Philly keeps hanging in there. Tyrese is amazing.
He's balling.
he is amazing. I mean, Embiid is Embiid. I don't know. I think the jury's still out on this in-season tournament. I get a little bit of the excitement. I wish they hadn't screwed up the playing court the way they have.
Yeah, it's a little different. I'm not used to that.
I'm not there yet. Look, I look at the champs of the champs until you beat them, and Jokic he's in another dimension. I mean, he is. If you really understand basketball, what this young man is doing is extremely special. I know they gave the MVP last year to Embiid, and they did it because
I didn't agree with that one.
Check out. There's a great stat. I read The Athletic all the time, and there's a report a year or so ago, and they talked about the percentage of points scored when the ball went through a certain person's hands. And you could go back to the Utah Jazz days and talk about the percentage of points scored where John Stockton kind of led it.
Yeah.
What Jokic did last year, actually the last 3 years, on him being the focal point of every single thing that happens on that offense.
Yes.
It's unheard of. He is a talent, a special breed of player, different than LeBron, obviously, in many ways. But he, at least the last 3 years, has been in that LeBron-like category of being that level of player. And so I think when you take that, it's hard to say that you discount them yet. But it's also really hard to back in the NBA. So we'll see.
Yeah. Jokic is, I would say right now, and I'm a huge LeBron James fan, but right now Jokic is the best player to me right now in the league. What he was able to do in these, and I think like we were last year was the time when they were fully healthy and they were at full strength. And that's what, of course, when they went all the way. And I know Murray was in and out the past couple of years. And I think that, had a lot to do with them, losing those series, but they got healthy last year. They got depth. And of course they went on to win the whole thing. And what Jokic is doing, of course, he's in top 10 assists now. What he's able to do in such a short time right now, he's doing that at a high level in this league. The triple doubles, it's insane what he's able to do. And like you said, of course they're the defending champs. You got to knock them off, but I don't have them repeating this year. I look at who do I say? I think the Timberwolves right now, I'm really shocked how they're playing right now. And I think Anthony Edwards is amazing. I think what they're doing is really awesome. Of course, I think Sacramento is in the picture because I love what they did last season and how they're, heading into this season. Golden State, I know we get what they were able to do, but I think Golden State is getting older. I think tempers are flaring. We saw what Draymond Green did against Gobert, the choking. It's just a lot. Klay Thompson is not the same player he was. I don't see Golden State. I think they're a playoff team, 100%. You can't discount them because Curry is still Curry. But them going all the way, I don't see the Warriors. I just think they're older. They're on their last legs. And of course, when you play that many times and that many championships for that long, that takes a toll. And now we're heading into those years where those guys are getting older. And then, of course, they had injuries. It's not the same. The Lakers, it's Anthony Davis for me. It's Anthony Davis. It's one day, one night, he's 30 points, defense over here, 7 blocks. And then one game, it's like 2 points. I don't know what you're getting from him. I don't know what to say about Anthony Davis. I don't know if I don't think they're going to trade him, but I know they were in conversation about getting maybe Zach LaVine and DeRozan and guys like that from the Bulls. I don't know how they're going to pull that off because I think they do have a good young core on that bench with Hachimura and Austin Reeves, but something's got to give with Anthony Davis. I just don't understand with him. What do you think about him?
Yeah, he's become unreliable almost.
Yeah.
Superstar talent level. Look, the Lakers, they made almost an improbable run last year, barely getting into the playoffs. But that's a good reminder to everybody about the NBA. Unlike the other sports, you talk about some of these young teams. I mean, look at what Orlando Magic is doing right now. I mean, they're balling. But the Orlando Magic aren't going to be there at the end, right?
No.
These guys that have been there, they know what it takes. in crunch time when the game slows down and they got to make a big shot, those guys always rise to the top at the very end.
Absolutely.
Now, remember early in his career, you said you were a LeBron fan. LeBron couldn't do that early in his career. Like his first 5 years, he wouldn't even take the final shot. That's always been to me the deciding factor between him and Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan
would take that shot.
No matter what, he had to have the shot, right? But I think you'll see these teams that have been there, they've been battle tested. That's why, even though I love my Celtics, I like Tatum. He hasn't hit those big shots yet. He's had some big games. He had a big game against Philly last year in Game 7, but he hasn't hit those big shots yet. That worries me a little bit. Don't rule out the Phoenix Suns crazy enough. Don't rule out the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, these are guys that have been there, battle tested, and they just want to make the playoffs, and then they'll start playing, right? You see it in the NBA. So I don't know who's going to win it. You make a lot of good points. I do think the Warriors are probably over that hump. They're probably a little too old. At some point, you just athletically can't keep up anymore. But I wouldn't count out Phoenix. I mean, if all those guys are playing and they're all healthy, they're hard.
That the offense would be unstoppable with Durant, Booker, and I mean, it's just with the Suns. My biggest thing is just making sure they're healthy. That's been the question. Can they all play together at that moment when it's time, and can they all stay healthy? That's just the biggest question for me. But if they're all healthy, it's going to be scary. It's going to be scary because 3 guys can easily get you 40 points, easily 30 points without a question. Everyone wants to say the Clippers with James Harden. I'm over James Harden. I'm over the Clippers. I don't think the Clippers, they'll be a playoff team. I think they'll be a playoff team, but I don't see them competing like that. I think, again, for them, it's kind of the same thing with the Warriors. They're on that last leg type thing too, because, Kawhi Leonard's not the same two-way player that we used to see him, when he was winning those championships. Paul George, he's been playing exceptional these past couple of years. James Harden, it's a matter of time of when James Harden is going to I'm done. Or same thing with Russell Westbrook. I know they say, he's coming off the bench. How long is that going to last? Are they going to do that the whole season? Are they going to be all wanting to do that the whole season? I'm not sure. So I don't see the Clippers. The Clippers are questionable, even though I think Ty Lue is a phenomenal coach. I just think they've given him a lot of divas, and he has to manage so much to try to keep them all happy. But the Clippers are interesting. But your Boston Celtics, I think they're going to be a very scary team. I just think like you said, I want to see Jason Tatum start to make those shots. That's what separates you from being the greatest or being in that conversation, is making those shots that are like, oh my gosh, he just did that. He sent them to the playoffs. He sent them there. That type of thing, and putting that game on the line for sure. But Milwaukee, I think they're still trying to figure things out, of course, and make sure like him and those guys together can really be cohesive, and with Dame Lillard, because I know we know Dame Lillard could give you 50. We know that, but it's just a matter of, can they do it together? If they start clicking, it's going to be scary. It's going to be scary. And then, of course, Miami Heat, I just think when Miami Heat gets to that moment, I think it's just they have that battle-tested mentality. They've been there. They've been battle-tested. They've been there in the championship and the Eastern Conference Finals for X amount of years. And they have a coach that's won. So I think there's a lot of teams in the NBA that are going to be. But I couldn't tell you today who I would say could win it all. I have to wait till maybe April to tell you that. But
it will
right
change.
now, I think there's a lot of teams.
And you'll have trade deadlines.
Yeah.
Trade before the deadline that'll change. I mean, I'm with you on Harden. I think Harden is a lot like Kyrie Irving. They're at the stage in their career now where they actually make teams worse.
Yeah.
Not better. Great individual players, but they're not really helping the team. I never understood why Milwaukee got rid of Budenholzer as coach. I thought he was a great coach. They should have helped him. But going back to what I mentioned a moment ago about battle-tested players, battle-tested coaches too, and Eric Spoelstra is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. This guy he's a magician, man. He can coach. He can get his team through series that you don't think they'll ever get through.
Right.
And so you can't count out Miami and Jimmy Butler. I mean, again, put him in a game 7 and the lights go on. I'll take a Jimmy Butler over Jason Tatum any day. I mean, the times I've seen Jason Tatum in an important playoff game go 4 for 21, you just get sick of it after a while. Whereas Butler, man, put him in a game 7. He's going to go 10 for 18 from the field, then he's going to go 13 out of 14 from the foul line because he's going to get there.
Yeah.
He just
and play defense at the same time as well.
Exactly.
Like he's going to get on your best, your best offensive player. And I like Tatum a lot. I just want to see him in those big moments. I want to see him take over that moment. Of course, we see him have great games, but when it's on the line, we need to see you take over and just say, get out the way. I'm doing this. I'm going to, propel my team to that promised land. But
Amen.
Chip, thank you so much for, giving your expertise on sports. I was so thankful to, get this conversation with you because there's so much going on in sports and it's not going to stop because there's more coming. But thank you again for being a guest on First Impression Sports Talk. Thank you.
It's been my honor, and happy to come back anytime you want to hear some guy who knows just a very little bit about sports talk about his opinions. So glad to do it.
Of course. Thank you so much. And everyone, that wraps up First Impression Sports Talk. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is just First Impression Sports Talk. We look forward to next week. I'm going to have Cole back on. I know that's everyone's favorite. Cole Brennan will be back on next week to talk about this college football weekend and what the implications mean for these top 4 teams and who's going to be in, who's not going to be in. We're going to talk about it all next week. Make sure you subscribe. See you next time.